Okay, so today we will be going over WCG IRB submissions for UCLA specifically. There's some UCLA specific instructions that I'll go over in these slides. There we go. So specifically what we'll be going over is the Connexus Access and Dashboard, Connexus being our submission platform that you use to submit to WCG IRB. We'll go over the submission workflow and the submission form in generalized fashion. Then we'll go over the system navigation and how to find what you need on the platform. And then we'll end with some resources and support, lastly with a Q&A. This presentation usually takes 25 to 30 minutes, so there will be plenty of time to ask questions at the end. First off is system access and signing in. For those who do not currently have a Connexus account, there are two ways to go to the platform. You can either go to our WCGclinical.com website and click log in next to where it says WCG IRB Connexus. Or you can use this direct link and bookmark it. In either case, it will take you to the same screen, which is this one here on the right. Your username is the email address you used to sign up when you created your account. And if you have not yet created an account, you'll just want to do so by selecting create a new account and following the prompts that populate on the web page. Now we'll go over the dashboard and access roles. So when you first sign in, you will be greeted with your dashboard, which is this screen here. Going from top to bottom, this top section here is your notification area, and it will show you how many updates have occurred since the last time you logged in. Below that are the make a submission and request access buttons, which I'll go into more detail later. And then the bread and butter of this page is the track submissions area. This is the area where you can keep track of where your submissions are at in their processing, see which holds are in place, as well as look at any draft submissions that you've started but have not yet submitted. Specifically, these three tabs are those three things that I just went over. The Needs Actions tab will show you the holds that are in place for your submissions. The In Progress tab is your submissions that are in progress but not currently on hold, and then the Drafts tab is for the ones that you have started but have not yet submitted. This view right here is known as the card view, but there is another chart view that you can access via these two buttons here. And it gives the same information, it's just outlined in a very different way. And this is the contrast between the two views. The card view gives you a very general idea of the submission regarding the hold, and then you can go get further details by clicking View Submission. While the chart view gives you a better overview of all of your submissions and where they're at in their processing via these 5 circles here. The other thing you can do with the chart view is if you want to only have the submissions that are on hold, for example, populate in this bottom section, you can just click the orange on hold bar, and that'll filter this below list so that only the submissions that are on hold show up in case that's your main concern or that's what you're mostly looking into when you log in. And you can do that with any of the bar charts that populate on this page. So it's just a different way of viewing things, and it's just dependent on your preferences. Going back to the Make a Submission button, when you click that to prep a submission, you will be greeted with this screen here where you have these 3 options. This first option here to add study and related documents, you'll select that when you're submitting a brand new protocol to us that we have not yet reviewed. And if you use that option, the typical turnaround time is approximately 2 weeks, barring any additional holds that take place as we process the request. The other 2 options on the right are Add Principal, Investigator, or Site, which is the one you typically use to submit the UCLA site under a protocol we have already approved. And then the Add Documents to Study or Site button is the button you'll use when you need to make amendments to one of your current approvals. The timeline for these 2 is approximately a week, again, barring any additional holds that take place as we process the request. Next to the Make a Submission button is the Request Access button, and you'll want to utilize that if you need to request access to any of the UCLA workspaces that you need access to, but don't currently have access to. When you use that option to request access, once you submit it, any manager in that workspace will receive the request via email. They can then go into Connexus and confirm or deny the request, and independent of how they respond to the request, you will then get an email notifying you of the response. In terms of site roles and what they have access to, if you have read-only access for the UCLA workspace, you can download both submission and outcome documents. If you have submitter access, you can do both of the previous things, but also make submissions on behalf of that workspace. And then if you're the manager, or a manager rather, because there can be more than one, you have all of the above, plus you can manage user access and add, edit, or remove people and their access levels in that workspace. Now we'll go more into the submission process and a few of the submission form pieces. Again, when you click Make a Submission, you do have those three options that populate here. And when you submit a new site, this is the option that you will be selecting. And this is the one we're kind of focusing on here, since that's the one you'll most often use when you click Make a Submission. When you do, it's typically best if you have site level access from a sponsor or CRO for that protocol, because then you can just search for the sponsor name, sponsor protocol ID, or the IRB tracking ID number to find the study and then submit under it. If they have not provided you site level access yet, it's okay. You can select this option on the right where it says Enter IRB tracking ID. That will take you to this screen here where you can enter said tracking ID and then still submit under that workspace, even if you haven't been granted access from the sponsor or CRO yet. Once you determine what option you need for that, or once you're able to submit under that workspace, you will be greeted with this screen here. And this is our online submission form. Our forms are now incorporated into the website itself, so you typically do not need to download any of our PDF versions anymore. There are different sections outlined on the left here of the screen, and depending on how much you've gone through those sections, the circle next to them will either have a check mark, which says you've completed that step. It'll have a partially filled circle, which means you've started it but haven't completed it yet. Or it'll have an empty circle, as you see here, which shows that you have not started that section at all. This section of the slide deck is just going over some of the sections on the submission form that we get a lot of questions on. This isn't a full list of all the questions, so if you do run into one of them that I'm not covering here, please reach out and I can provide any further clarity. This particular question is the contact section, and what you want to do is make sure you add all contacts who need to receive day-to-day correspondence from WCG regarding your submission for that protocol. We do not need a full list of site staff. Your delegation log and the entire research staff is handled and reviewed by UCLA. So the only individuals that you need to list here are those who need to be included in general email correspondence we send out regarding that study for UCLA. You can add sponsors and CRO contacts here as well. And just a quick note, whoever you add here does not automatically get Connexus access to that workspace. That is a separate process that's handled via either managers inviting contacts to that workspace, or contacts requesting access via that request access button I showed you previously. This is the research locations question, and you just want to be sure that you add all locations where research is engaged. And then you want to make sure that the information in this section is accurate and how you want it listed on your certificates of action, which are our approval letters, as how you list them here is going to be how they're listed on that approval letter. For research team training, we do not need certificates of training for site staff or your PI. What we do need is the PI's CV and medical license, if not already on file. In terms of training certificates, there's this research team training question on the submission form. And as long as you answer yes to this, you're letting our board know that the site PI has ensured that all research staff have undergone the appropriate training that's needed in order to conduct the research. And then in regards to updated CVs, we will only request one if the one we have on file is 5 years out of date. Now, UCLA does have a master service agreement or MSA in place between UCLA and WCG IRB. So for this institutional services question, you can always answer yes to it. And then what you'll want to put in those two text boxes below the main question is the name of your organization, which is UCLA, and then your 5-digit company number that was created previously in our internal system, and that number is 61626. Now, our staff have other ways of verifying that number before they move forward with a submission for UCLA, but adding that number to the form helps them in that process, as it's just there on the form and they don't have to go search for it. And what that number does is it ensures that all of the UCLA processing instructions properly populate for that submission, so we don't miss any of those steps. For consent form processing, we do have consent language on file for UCLA that our staff utilize to process your consent forms. And then, so you'll always want to answer yes to that first question there. And then below that is how you let our staff know how we should process your submitted consents, if at all. Typically, what I see is UCLA does submit a redlined consent form for review. And in those cases, you'll want to select this third option here stating, I am submitting a consent form with requested language changes shown as tracked. And then our staff know to utilize that submitted tracked ICF for your submission instead of pulling in the sponsor template and working it up from scratch. Once you get to the end of the submission process, you'll be greeted with this screen for uploading all of your additional documentation for review. To upload documents, you either drag and drop them into that drag and drop field, or you can click the click to upload button to do so there as well. You will want to avoid having security features or passwords on documents, as that can prevent them from making it into our internal system and can delay processing of the request. We do have additional PDF smart forms on our website for the few forms that currently don't populate during the submission workflow. But again, most of them will populate automatically, and you typically will not need to download anything separately. One thing to note regarding documents that are required is UCLA does have a sign-off process. So if you submit an initial review submission and the OHRPP sign-off cover letter is not included in the request, we will place the submission on hold and request that before we move forward. The very last page is this one here, where you will see that Submit for IRB Review button in the bottom right corner. This is also where you can download a draft PDF of your submission in case you want to get additional feedback from anyone else helping you with that study before clicking Submit for IRB Review. But if everything looks good and you're wanting WCG to start our process, you will click that Submit button, and then a confirmation ID will appear fairly soon after that occurs. If you ever reach out to me for assistance, that confirmation ID will assist me in locating the submission. So if you can include that ahead of time, that'll help me respond to your inquiry sooner. Additionally, next to the Add Principal Investigator Site button, when you click Make a Submission, is that Add Documents to Study Site button. And what that will do is greet you with this screen where you can select specifically what type of amendment you are submitting for review. All of these forms are much shorter than the initial review form since they're just amendments typically. But again, the same process is the same where you'll just go through the submission workflow, answer all the questions, and then click Submit for IRB review once everything's uploaded and completed. Now we'll go over navigating Connexus. Next to the dashboard button at the top, there is the Submissions tab. And that tab will greet you with this screen where you can see any submission that you have access to for any of the workspaces that you have access to that have been sent for WCG review. You can search for a specific submission using the search bar here, depending on the submission name. I do recommend coming up with some sort of standardized way of naming submissions if you haven't already, as that can help you search for them quicker. And then the other thing you can do here is click the column headers, and that will sort each row in ascending or descending order, alphabetical order, I should say, depending on how many times you click it. And that can also help you find what you're looking for. When you click into a submission, you will be greeted with the submissions detail page, as you see on the right here. And what that will do is show you where the submission is at in its processing. It'll show you the study details for that submission. And this is an example of the confirmation ID that I referenced previously. And in the bottom section here, you have these three tabs for submitting sites, submitted documents, or outcome documents. Submitted sites will typically just list your UCLA PI. The only time you'll see additional PI names here is if you have access to multiple sites under that study, if UCLA happens to be acting as the coordinating center, which I don't think happens very often, if at all. Next to that, you'll see the Submitted Documents tab, where you can go in and see what specifically was sent to us. And then the Outcome Documents tab lets you look at any outcome documents that retransmitted after we process the request, should there be any. Next to the Submissions tab in Connexus is the Studies and Sites tab, and they look identical, at least in terms of their format. I'm not going over the Studies tab because typically UCLA is not the sponsor of the research. So you will typically want to just utilize the Sites tab to find your PIs and workspaces for the studies you're working on. In the Sites tab, you have a very similar search bar here where you can search by PI name or the protocol number or what have you to find the specific workspace you're looking for. And you can do all the same filterings with the column headers here so that they are in order of alphabetical order in ascending or descending order. And then once you click into a PI name, you will be greeted with that site's or PI's details page. What this page will show you is the study information at the top. Below that is your specific UCLA PI details. And then very similar three tabs here as you saw in the submissions details page. The submissions tab here is essentially just a truncated version of the submissions tab in the Connexus webpage itself, as it will only show which submissions were specifically sent for this PI under this study, as opposed to all of the submissions you have access to everywhere. Next to that is the Outcomes Documents tab, and that will show you all outcome documents for any submission that has been processed for this PI under this study. And then lastly, you'll see the Contacts tab here, which will show you who has access to the workspace, what their access level is, and whether or not there are any managers in the workspace as well. If you are a manager, you will see this Manage Contacts button up in the upper right corner. And when you click that, you will be greeted with this Manage Study Contacts page. As a manager, you can utilize this page to add users to the workspace by entering their email address here, selecting which permission level they should have, and then clicking Invite. You can go to the Requests tab to approve or deny any requests that have been sent in. And then down below here, you can remove users, change their permissions levels by hitting this pencil icon, as well as just, again, see who has access and what their access level is. So for some additional resources and additional support, the last tab in the Connexus webpage is the Resources tab. And here you will find our user guide, which is a very detailed PDF document. I think it's over 250 pages now because we've added pictures. And that's a very thorough guide if you ever need to find something specific and I'm not available or our client care team is not available to help, such as really late at night. Below that are how-to videos, which are about 2 to 3 minutes in length over specific sections of Connexus, should you like to watch videos instead of read PDFs. And then below the videos are downloadable PDF versions of basically the videos that are shorter in length than our user guide and cover very specific sections of the platform. Now, for general questions, our client care team can be reached at either that phone number, that email address you see there, or this View Live Chat icon, which you will see on most web pages in Connexus. It just depends on how you wish to relay your question and how you would like to get answers. For any other inquiries, or if there's anything that I can help with, my information is there on the screen. I am on PST time, but I'm typically available on, I have my work phone with me. So if you need anything urgently, just let me know. That's the entire slide deck. So now we will open it up for Q&A.